Right now, the NCAA releases its scathing report into Syracuse University athletics. Syracuse head coach Jim Boeheim has been piling up victories for nearly 40 years. But tonight, he's about to lose a big chunk of his record. Tonight, we're digging deeper into the lengthy NCAA report. Plus, what about the treasured national championship from back in 2003? The report does raise concerns about player eligibility and violations going all the way back to 2001. Tonight, we continue our extensive live team coverage of the NCAA Pro. We're sorting out what this all means for the university, the coaches, and even basketball fans. Some of the most serious punishments include the suspension of Coach Boeheim for 9 conference games. Plus, Syracuse University will lose 3 scholarships a year for 4 years. The NCAA is taking away wins from previous games, and that may harm Coach Boeheim's legacy. Matt's live from the Mello Center now, the state-of-the-art practice facility where the Orange basketball team calls home. Matt?
Well, Megan, it's worth noting that the Mello Center really was built in the wake of the 03 championship, and that's how far back these violations go. On the conference call with the NCAA today, I was listening in on their conference chairman who was talking about the investigation and noted that these violations were considered to be the highest level with aggravated circumstances. They took this very seriously, and they said if the same problems had surfaced today, Coach Boeheim could have been facing a 1-year suspension for an entire season. But still, the penalties are severe. 9 games for Coach Jim Boeheim at the start of the conference season, so that'll likely be after the new year next year. He's never been suspended before. The university is standing by the longtime coach, though, stating it did not feel the program lacked institutional control, and the coach should be held responsible. The NCAA sees that all differently.
Ultimately, we have a situation where the desire to achieve success on the basketball court overrides academic integrity. It really demonstrated clearly misplaced priorities.
Now, Sports Director Nico Tamurian joins us now. And Nico, before we get to more with you, we want to look back to 2003, right. Really the pinnacle of Jim Boeheim's career, and certainly for this community as a community of Orange fans. The greatest moment of his career really could have been in jeopardy with this. That victory in New Orleans has not been harmed, though, by the extensive sanctions. Fans will really never forget that team. It featured Carmelo Anthony, that the center here is named after, Jerry McNamara, Hakeem Warwick, Weth Duaney, all the guys that we all remember so fondly. The violations did go back to 2001, but it turns out that the NCAA and the university in their discussions agreed that 2004 was going to be the benchmark where the sanctions could go back to because they felt like it was just more than 10 years was too far for them to have any kind of punishment. So that makes sense considering how long this has drawn out.
I'll tell you, a lot of Orange fans tonight breathing a sigh of relief that the statute of limitations went to May of 2003. That championship forever protected. That's a huge thing. Imagine what that would have done to the psyche of our town.
Yeah, that would have been really a severe price to pay. Obviously, that part of a negotiated arrangement here tonight.
No question. And, you know, going back to Coach Boeheim, I mean, really, he's the guy that's singled out in this report. There's penalties, as like we mentioned, the suspension for him, 9 games, and not just 9 early games, but you know, these are ACC conference games against top-flight opponents, but there's still milestones for Jim Boeheim in jeopardy. The university self-imposing a vacation of 24 victories, so Boeheim already down to 942 wins as we speak. That number could go up because the NCAA wants to meet in the next 45 days to knock that down even further. Wins could be vacated even from 2013. How'd that impact the 2013 Final Four run? That remains to be seen as well. So the immediate impact comes from that suspension for 9 games to Coach Boeheim. The scholarship reduction, that'll be huge in the next 4 to 5 years to come, and even further than that as those players get older. But Coach's milestones and his quest for 1,000 wins certainly in jeopardy. And if you think about it, I mean, right now it's at 942. We're getting hypothetical here, but Coach, a couple of years staying on could hit that mark. But if the NCAA marks that down, say another 50, even 100 wins, then obviously that mark would be well out of reach for Coach.
One thing that's really fascinating about this whole story is Syracuse alone in having violations like this across the country?
I don't think so.
Or are they more widespread than maybe what we might realize?
You know, a lot of national pundits calling to mind North Carolina, and their penalties widely seen as much more severe than this. That's an ongoing NCAA investigation. If Syracuse was hit this hard, you wonder how North Carolina will be, but that's another conversation for another day.
You know, we talked about the fans. Our Alex Ursula met up with some of the fans today. He's at Tully's tonight, getting reaction from people who really live and die with the Orange this time of year. Alex.
Well, Matt, here inside Tully's, it's very apparent when you look around at the walls at all the pictures and memorabilia from Syracuse University athletics, just how much the orange really means to this community here as they live with the team during the wins and they tend to die with them also during the losses. And this punishment imposed by the NCAA is one which many SU diehards have been anticipating, well, for quite some time now, leaving many fans wondering what else will happen to their team after the self-imposed postseason ban, mainly asking, will the Orange miss out on any other future tournaments in the near future? But now these fans have answers to their questions, and many tell me that these are answers which hit the team and then in turn the fans very hard. The suspension of Coach Boeheim, the loss of scholarships for the team, and the vacation of wins from past season comes as a complete shock to many fans, but for others this was to be expected after a years-long investigation into Syracuse University by the NCAA. The team will not have to miss any additional postseason games after this season. The one thing all fans do agree on is the silver lining in the announcement, which has everyone reacting.
I just think that it's not fair, and somebody needs to investigate how they make all the decisions that they come up with.
It's a lot to take in, but if everything is what they say it is, then it should be what he's getting.
I was actually disgusted because, the guy's been here his whole life and done a lot for Syracuse. He can't follow the kids 24/7.
Coming up on NBC3 News at 6 o'clock, we're going to bring you some of the interviews I had with fans here and talking about the long-term future of the program here in Syracuse. We're going to be talking about upcoming decisions by recruits. For now, we're live here inside Tully's. I'm Alex Versilla. Matt, back to you.
Now, as for Coach Boeheim and the Orange team, right now they're in the air in their chartered flight down to North Carolina, getting ready for that last game of the season against North Carolina State tomorrow at noon. Megan?
People will be watching that game closely, Matt, and certainly listening and waiting for any reaction from Coach Boeheim. We'll see you tonight at 6. All right, well, as you might imagine, a lot of people have been talking about this on social media today. Here's what Andy Katz, an ESPN analyst, said today. Once again, I totally disagree with a self-imposed postseason ban prior to the announcement. Syracuse got crushed. Let it all start next season. Brent Axe, a local sports analyst, saying taking one win away, let alone 108 wins, is just pointless. One of the dumbest things in the NCAA's arsenal. Dante Green, a former SU player, shaking my head, he says, I still bleed orange. And then this tonight from Doug Gottlieb, a CBS sports analyst. Apparently the NCAA does not demand schools drug tests, though conferences likely do. Cuse didn't follow by the laws of their own rules. Tweet at us tonight at CNY Central.
Fallout tonight from the NCAA investigation. Dr. Dale Gross is out as athletic director, and the chancellor has asked Jim Boeheim to give him a retirement date. We have team coverage on the way for you tonight. We'll tell you what the chancellor said about meetings with the Hall of Fame coach and when he will talk about his long-awaited decision to retire. We have live team coverage from the Mello Center coming up in just a few minutes, Megan.
Well, that includes Syracuse Orange fans who have been sharing the news all day. The end is coming for the Boeheim era. We'll hear how they're reacting. Then testimony begins in the murder trial of Dr. Robert Newlander, who's accused of killing his wife. We'll have a breakdown of what 4 witnesses said today on the stand. But we begin here tonight with the big news of the day, a major shakeup at Syracuse University as the school makes several big announcements today regarding the athletic department, the NCAA investigation, and head basketball coach Jim Boeheim's future. We have live team coverage from the SU Hill tonight about the big changes announced by Chancellor Kent Syverud this morning, sending shockwaves across central New York. Matt will join us live from the Mello Center in just a moment. But first tonight, Daryl Gross resigns as the university's athletic director. He's being reassigned to another position within the university. Then the university says it will appeal some of the NCAA sanctions. They believe the penalties are excessive and disproportionate. And probably the most shocking announcement of the day, longtime head basketball coach Jim Boeheim will retire in 2018. Right now, Matt's live outside the Mello Center with more on these big changes coming to the university. Matt?
Well, Megan, we're here at the Mello Center. This facility was built in the wake of that 2003 National Championship won by Coach Jim Boeheim. His office is on the second floor. This is where he holds practice for the team in a state-of-the-art facility that has helped elevate the program to high national rankings year after year after year. Now, Coach Boeheim, who unofficially now is the second winningest basketball coach in NCAA history, is not yet talking about his retirement, but we will hear from him tomorrow. The university has scheduled that 10 a.m. news conference at the Dome. That's where the chancellor has asked the coach to respond thoughtfully and appropriately to the serious findings in the NCAA report. Now remember, it was nearly 2 weeks ago now that the Infractions Committee found there was a lack of institutional control of the academics of the basketball program. One of the central elements of the report was the effort made by Athletic Director Daryl Gross, Jim Boeheim, and the program's academic advisor to keep Star Center Fab Mello eligible to play. The report showed that the exhaustive effort to get a grade change for Fab Mello by fabricating a paper and claiming it was written by the player when in fact it wasn't. Now, Coach Boeheim will have 3 more years to run the program that he's been a part of since he came here initially as a player in 1962. The university did not say who will take his place, although certainly for years assistant coach Mike Hopkins has been called the coach in waiting, although still that's an uncertainty tonight. Now, other developments tonight. The head of the athletics department, Dr. Dale Gross, has been forced out of his position. He will remain with the university, but he's immediately out as director of athletics. In fact, effective today, Gross will be shifted to vice president and special assistant to the chancellor. He'll also be an adjunct professor in the College of Sport and Human Dynamics. It will be Pete Sala who will take over as interim director of athletics. Pete Sala currently manages the Carrier Dome and other athletic facilities. He's really worked his way up from the bottom up at the Dome since coming to the university some 30 years ago. All-American running back and former SU star Floyd Little, who's been a part of the athletics department over the last few years, will assist in this transition. Now, our team coverage continues tonight with sports director Nico Tamurian. He's joining me here at the Mello Center with more on the future of the athletic program and what Dr. Daryl Gross is saying about his change of position tonight. Nico?
Well, Matt, immediately, as you mentioned, the changes that Pete Sala, who has been the managing director of the Carrier Dome for the past 5 years, he takes over as interim athletic director. He is also on the committee to find the new permanent athletic director. But this is really sweeping changes. When you think about it, Daryl Gross really put his mark on this campus over the past decade. He arrived from Southern California back in 2004. In fact, USC was the assistant AD, and while there were always some things that he'll get roasted for by SU fans, like the hiring of Greg Robinson as football coach, it goes without saying Daryl did quite a bit of good on the SU Hill. The feather in his cap, of course, getting the Orange into the ACC while its rivals like the Connecticut Huskies are stuck as mid-majors. Now let's take a comprehensive look at what Gross was able to accomplish in his decade as athletic director. As mentioned, he began his tenure back in 2004. He led the university into the ACC, and one big thing, he helped the university raise its New York City profile. Of course, with the team being in the ACC, no more Big East tournament in the Big Apple, but the football team played at MetLife Stadium. He's also credited with increasing athletics fundings to its highest level. Daryl, talking with ESPN Radio Syracuse today, rather upbeat given all of the events today.
We've done so many great things here that you know, how much more can you max out and without getting some fresh eyes to check it out, you know? So I look at it in such a positive way. I think it's positive for the university and it's positive for me and my family and it still takes advantage of some skills that we can do to help advance the institution. So it's you know, in a day which a lot of people will probably think that, you know, there's devastation, I see nothing but positive.
And it remains to be seen just how long Gross will remain in his new role that Matt told us about as a special assistant to the chancellor. A name, Matt, the sources are telling me early on to look out for as his potential permanent replacement include Nick Carparelli, a former Syracuse alum, former number 2 in command of the Big East Conference. He's currently at Under Armour Clothing Company as their relations to college sports. That's a name to keep in the days, I guess, perhaps even weeks and months going forward. But no doubt a historic day on the Hill today.
And while certainly there's a committee to make this selection, Chancellor Syverud obviously will have a big say in who this next person will be.
I'll tell you what, Chancellor Syverud, about less than a year on the Hill, sweeping changes already, really cleaning up the university's act.
All right, thank you, Nico. Much more team coverage live from the Mello Center as we continue here tonight. Now more from Megan.
Well, Matt, right now on our website, you can read the email released by Chancellor Syverud in its entirety, and you can learn more details about the university's plans moving forward. Coming up in the next 90 minutes, we will have much more on the big shakeup on the Hill today. In just a few minutes, our Samantha German will show us what fans are saying about Jim Boeheim's impending retirement. Then later on at 5:30, a member of the university's NCAA athletic department explains why he supports the school's decision to fight against the NCAA ruling. Then we'll look deeper at Matt's exclusive interview with assistant coach Mike Hopkins about a month ago. Of course, he is the heir apparent to Jim Boeheim. We'll see what he had to say to Matt in just a few minutes. For the first time since the big announcement, Jim Boeheim addresses the Syracuse shakeup.
And I do regret that these violations happened, and I apologize for any harm it has brought to my players, the university, or embarrassment it has caused to our alumni, students, and fans.
It was a standing room only day today as the head coach of the men's basketball team talked about the announcement of his retirement and the NCAA report into his basketball program.
Coach Jim Boeheim also talked about the university's decision to appeal some of those sanctions against him by the NCAA and also the charge of academic fraud within his program. Now, we were there this morning as Coach Boeheim opened up with his remarks, calling the sanctions against him unduly harsh. On his retirement, he says 3 years is the right time to step away. Well, new at 5, Alex Dunbar is live at the Mello Center with a closer look at what the longtime head coach revealed today. Alex.
Well, Matt, Jim Boeheim was both defiant and apologetic today at his press conference, acknowledging that violations had occurred, but saying that the NCAA's sanctions were unduly harsh. In a standing room only crowd of photographers and reporters, Jim Boeheim said he was ultimately responsible for NCAA violations committed by his basketball staff, but said the NCAA's claim that he did not promote an atmosphere of compliance was untrue.
I meet with my staff on an almost daily basis to discuss compliance matters. My assistant coaches and staff members know the NCAA rules and know that we must follow them.
Boeheim said he will appeal the NCAA's 9-game suspension he received as part of the sanctions, and said he believes the NCAA disregarded his decades of promoting compliance in the basketball program. Boeheim said he did not know about allegations that a YMCA employee was improperly paying athletes until after the NCAA started its investigation. The NCAA report cites other cases where they believe athletes received improper assistance on schoolwork. Boeheim believes former center Fab Melo was the only documented case of academic fraud.
These violations occurred because our former director of basketball operations took it upon himself to provide impermissible academic assistance.
A former academic support services staffer told the NCAA they were hesitant to report questionable academic work because they believed the basketball program received special treatment. Boeheim disagreed with that view.
I've been told that I intimidate people. I don't do it intentionally.
And Jim Boeheim said that if his appeal of his 9-game suspension for next season is unsuccessful, he will voluntarily go without pay for those games. And coming up tonight at 6, we'll hear much more from Jim Boeheim about Fab Melo and that very controversial grade change he received to regain eligibility. For now, reporting from the Carmelo Anthony Center at Syracuse University, I'm Alex Dunbar.
Thank you, Alex. Worth noting, by the way, the coach talked for more than an hour, taking questions well past the time that was expected and really called for by the handlers at the university.
Well, our team coverage continues tonight with our sports director, Nico Tamurian, here now to tell us what the future of the basketball program looks like as it prepares to say goodbye to its longtime head coach in a couple of years. Nico.
No question, Matt and Megan, for beyond 3 years from now is anybody's guess. Anytime somebody spends more than 50 years on a campus and their job is done, well, that'll cause drastic changes. And now we no longer have confirmation that Mike Hopkins will be the next coach. He might still be, but Coach Boeheim is saying it's up to the chancellor, and that was not what today was about. Today's press conference was all about, as Alex told us, Boeheim's rebuttal to the NCAA and to put an official end date on Coach Boeheim's career. Boeheim says he will be in charge 3 more seasons. After that, it will be time to retire. And while he says the goal, winning, does not change at all, this has given Coach an opportunity to think about what exactly his legacy is and what it will be going forward.
Everybody has their opinion, and everybody will have their opinion about my coaching ability. That's part of my legacy. The other part, I hope, of my legacy that I care about is that people in this community think, in this nation who are Syracuse people, think that I've been loyal to Syracuse University, that I've done everything I can for Syracuse University, and that I've done everything I can for my community. And I've done everything that I can, and some people will hold me accountable to that or what I haven't done, but I'm comfortable. And what I really care about is the opinion of those people.
Certainly, Coach Boeheim putting much more stock into what Central New Yorkers will think now and going forward. Of course, the national media not very happy with Jim Boeheim these days.
And certainly a lot of people sort of wonder, what's it like at home? You know, behind closed doors. What do he and his wife say to each
That's a
other?
good point. Well, attending the news conference today, Coach Boeheim's wife, Julie, she has seen how the weight of this investigation has really weighed on her husband. I caught up with her in the Dome.
You stood and watched your husband. What were your thoughts while he was talking?
A lot of relief to finally hear him speak his mind and his piece and his position on this. It's clear the guy is passionate about what he does, passionate about his players, passionate about the program at Syracuse University, and he finally got to say his piece.
How has this affected him over a long period of time? Has it been weighing on his mind?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's gone to bed every night for 8 years thinking about this and waiting and waiting and waiting. So finally, we know where we are in this and we can move forward. And, you know, I just said he's not ranting and raving. He isn't angry. He isn't crying. He's motivated. He is so inspired to pick up the pieces and move forward.
What about the retirement? It's a question that's been coming up for years. How do you feel about this timeline?
You know, I can't. It's not a big deal. Everybody's making this such a big deal. And I think, you know, he was a day-to-day guy, but that was because of this. What if he had retired in the middle before we ever handed this down? A new coach comes in and this comes in. You know, he's the kind of guy that wants to see this through. And that's the timeline.
Is it okay to have him home more then, 3 years from now?
Not really, no. He'll be busy. The guy has more energy than I do or anyone ever.
That's Julie Boeheim, the coach's wife. Now, Chancellor Ken Syverud is glad to finally be able to talk about this NCAA investigation, although he says the release of the infractions report does not provide any relief because there's still so much work to be done. When I talked with him this morning, he defended the importance of the athletics program being an integral part of a thriving university.
This has been a hard time that has led some to question whether the highest level intercollegiate athletics belongs at Syracuse University and belongs here. And I believe it does, and it will.
Now, coming up on NBC3 News at 5:30, you'll hear much more from this interview. Among the key topics, the decision to remove Darryl Gross as athletic director and to talk with retirement with Coach Jim Boeheim. We'll be bringing you much more on the Boeheim and the Syracuse University shakeup coming up. Also at 5:30, we're going to hear from Alex Ruscilla what fans are saying about the news conference and what the coach had to say today. We'll also hear more from that interview with the chancellor. Then at 6 o'clock, Alex Dunbar will touch more on the morning news conference as it relates to Fab Melo's role in the violations. And one more note, we'll talk about Mike Hopkins and his future as the potential head coach.